Hey, so today it's chapter 2 of Phoenix Incandescent, and the chapter is Racy Red today. I just wanted to throw this out here. When you actually read my books, there are tidbits at the beginning of each chapter. I'm not going to read those for this because you can read the books without them, but it's just not as good. They're kind of fun little things I do. They're usually 4 or 5 little sentences, and they talk about something that happened to the character in the past that will relate to something in the books, or it could be just a scene I left out, and so I just give you a little bit of tiny hint at something. I have tons of fun with them. I adore them. They're kind of weird, I guess. I don't know. They're kind of kooky and fun, but I like weird and kooky and fun, so if you'd like to read them and add to your experience, then go pick up one of my books. Anyway, okay, chapter 2. Charlotte sighed softly as she looked through the dresses in her walk-in closet, which wrapped around the outside of half of her room. One end of the closet held a full 3-sided mirror. The other end held one of 2 doors to her bathroom. She passed the sections of casual clothes and informal dresses. Tonight would be a full ball gown night. She walked back and forth in front of the numerous ball gowns she owned. Little black, racy red, innocent white. She shook her head at them one by one. Would she still fit in the ball gowns? She was muscular like her parents, but she had larger muscles and lots of curves. She most definitely could not eat whatever she wanted like her mother, who could easily shock strangers with her large appetite in a tiny frame. Charlotte padded back to the front of the closet where the mirror stood. It had been 4 years since she had worn a ball gown. The human world had far less need for more formal dresses, but she had never grown out of enjoying dressing like a princess now and then. She turned side to side in the mirror, gauging her curves critically. How did 2 skinny parents produce a not-so-skinny daughter? If she wasn't going to get her father's magic, then surely she could have inherited her mother's figure. But no. She made a face at herself and shook the silly thoughts away. Today she needed to focus on her decision. She was fairly confident that she had made the right choice, but she let both choices dangle in front of her, in case a last-minute argument might present itself with enough weight to justify a change of heart and mind. Ebby, dressed in pink tights under a black dress, slipped in the closet and interrupted her internal debate. "What are we staring at, Lovey?" She tickled Charlotte's ribs and danced to the back of the closet for a glance at the dresses. "Nope, not a one of them will do." She grabbed Charlotte's hand and pulled her downstairs to her room. "We will worry about the dress later. First, let's get ready for the dress." "Ebby, I need to be back at the front desk soon," Charlotte insisted from Ebby's doorway. Ebby's room was dark and cool. The stone tiles under her feet were chilled, and the windows covered with thick curtains. Charlotte shivered a little. Ebby flipped all the lights on and raised her eyebrows with a grin. "You never did like coming in here." Charlotte tilted her head to the side. "Yes, because if I had to come in here, I was in major trouble." Ebby turned back to her and kissed her on the cheek. "Well, whose fault was that?" Charlotte laughed and shook her head. She remembered a few instances that she still felt innocent about. Ebby tugged at her hand. "Let's make a new fun memory in here." She flipped her red braid. "There are some days in life that long for pampering and a nap until it's time to go to celebration. You have been working hard all summer long. Let me indulge you, please." She grabbed a pile of towels. "You are all acting mighty shady today," Charlotte said suspiciously. She spoke the question that had tickled the back of her brain ever since Joseph had announced the celebration. "Chime and Spindle are getting married tonight, aren't they?" Ebby dropped the towel she was holding and howled with laughter. "You really think Joseph is going to let Chime get married so young?" Charlotte, foot-tapping the towels impatiently, waited until Ebby wiped the tears from her eyes and ceased laughing. "But Ebby, she's 240 years old. Surely she's old enough now." "Just barely," Ebby sighed. "Ah, to be young again." She pointed to a stool. "Sit." Charlotte raised an eyebrow before she let Ebby start working on her nails. "Ebby, why didn't you marry?" Silence snaked between them. Ebby's lips were pursed, her shoulders straight and tight. She focused on Charlotte's fingernails, glancing up briefly now and then, but always dropping her head back down with a shake. Charlotte wondered if she had gone too far with that question. Ebby, like Isaac and Audrey, held secrets. Charlotte could sense them hiding below the surface. She had needled the 3 of them for years to no avail. "Someday I will tell you, I promise." Ebby said with finality. She looked up at Charlotte with soft eyes and an apologetic frown. Charlotte offered a shrug. The subject was dropped between them, but Charlotte silently simmered inside. Just when would she be old enough for Ebby and her parents to be straight with her? She knew the answer to that question. It wasn't about age. It was about ability. Charlotte didn't develop magic. Her mother married into magic, so she was included, but that inclusion did not extend to Charlotte. She glanced around the room slowly. In the middle of the room was a chandelier made up of green gemstones over a large round bed covered with a thick magnetic comforter. There were no pictures, no decorations in the room. Oh, magenta. Hello. Do you ever, do that? I have to apologize straight up because I still have words that I mess up like that. I was sitting there thinking of X-Men, and I was like, wait a second, that's the wrong word. But anyway, none of this is actually part of my book. I'll get back to it. There was a closet and bathroom like Charlotte's, but nobody was allowed past the locked doors. Charlotte focused back on Ebby. Do you know what we are celebrating tonight? Ebby sat back in her chair. Yes, I do. She smiled demurely before patting her legs. Feet next. And that would be something you will find out in time. They talked of many other things instead. The appropriate age for Hobbs to marry, normal human news, news from the magical world, and suspicions of what Basil had hidden in the locked cupboard in the kitchen. Charlotte wondered what was hidden in all the locked places in the castle, but it was true that privacy was limited with so many guests and students running about. Privacy and what was in those locked places were guarded fiercely. Later in the afternoon, Chime woke them up when she bounced on the bed and landed between them. Ebby opened one eye suspiciously and sneered. Yes, Hob? Charlotte sat up and popped Ebby with the pillow. Ebby had always been a little sterner, a little closer on the Hobbs. It was not a subject that Charlotte was even allowed to bring up, but she did try to neutralize it whenever possible. She turned to her friend with a smile. Yes, Chime? Ebby rolled away and stretched. Chime narrowed her eyes at Ebby before turning back to Charlotte with a pleasant grin. All the Danes have been checked out. Your parents have been home for some time, and now are asking for the both of you. Thanks. Charlotte started for the door. Will you join us, Chime? Hang on, I'm so sorry. I just noticed that I've never explained why Ebby's had a problem with him. And I've gone 5 books. So, spoiler, and I obviously am going to have to redo this chapter without messing up sentences and words and making notes. And I don't remember where I'm at. I'm just going to guess. The three walked down to the first floor of the tower. The room was simply yet comfortably furnished. It was a perfect combination of Audrey and Isaac. Furniture of plush and rustic, colors of green and brown, and scents of lavender and mint. Charlotte paused at the entrance. Audrey sat at her vanity in a mid-length dress of black lace over dark green, and her ankles crossed under the stool. Her eyes locked with Charlotte's, and she smiled in that way that mothers do when their grown children enter a room. Charlotte crossed to her and bent to kiss her mother on both cheeks. Lottie, how I've missed you! Audrey hugged her. I've missed you, Mama. Charlotte answered from inside the hug. You did a fine job this summer, Isaac said from the desk on the opposite side of the room. He sat in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, and a book across his legs. Charlotte crossed to him and kissed him as well. Thanks, Papa, she said. We have a surprise for you tonight. Charlotte sat on the end of the bed with Chime and Evie. Is this about tonight or an addition? It's about tonight, Isaac said. He glanced over at Audrey. A gift from us. Charlotte stayed silent. What exactly was the gift? She looked at each of her parents carefully. What were they up to? Was the gift a celebration or something for the celebration? She gulped in a breath of air. Could this be their way of telling her what to choose? She sat up straight and blinked back the wide eyes that had taken over her face for a moment. She turned to Ebby and glared. Ebby glared back and then nodded at Audrey. Mama? Charlotte asked. Audrey brought out a large white box from the closet. She set it in Charlotte's lap and kissed her forehead. I've been planning this event for a long time. I know that your father and I are terribly old-fashioned, but we wanted to have a ball for you. It will be a sort of coming out to magical society ball. Charlotte gripped the sides of the box. A choose to keep your memories in Mario Weaver ball, more like it. A last chance ball. A you don't want to leave this, do you, ball? Why didn't they get it? She wanted to marry when the time was right, not because she had to. She looked up at her mother's face, so hopeful and kind. She wished they would talk to her. No, wait. She wished they would fight with her. She laughed silently at the idea. Neither of her parents were the loud fighting type. Okay, she would compromise and wish they would have a stern discussion with her. It wasn't that they couldn't. It was that they wouldn't in this case. They were too afraid to ask how she felt, too afraid to learn what direction she leaned. Thank you, she said quietly. What's wrong? Her father asked just as quietly. She wrapped the truth in a lie with a bow. I'm a little disappointed. She looked over at Chime. I thought you might be getting married tonight. Chime laughed and shook her head. The tension in the room slid back into the shadows. My father's having issues with me getting married. Something about me being the youngest. I think we may elope. Ebby and Charlotte gasped. Chime laughed even bigger. Everybody knew that Joseph would have a fit if she eloped, for Hobbs simply did not celebrate in small ways. Audrey sat down by Chime and wrapped an arm around her. I wouldn't worry about eloping. This morning I overheard Joseph speaking to Basil about needing a wedding cake for you soon. She winked wickedly. But don't you let on that you know. We should have some fun with Joseph first. Perhaps I'll let it drop that you two had asked where Danes go to elope. The other women laughed while Chime looked dreamily down at her plum-colored dress. She spread her hands on the soft fabric and smoothed it out. It won't be long before this is a bridal gown. Audrey added, not long at all. Charlotte watched Chime's pleased face as well as the look of pain that crossed Ebby's face. What secret was the woman keeping? Ebby recovered quickly. Congrats, Hob. She placed a hand on Chime's for a brief moment. I'm going to get dressed. Chime left soon after, and Charlotte was left sitting at the end of the bed between her parents. They spoke of their trip. She spoke of the fun and mayhem that was typical of the guests. Her mother held her close. Her father grasped her hand in his and held tight. They didn't speak of the decision. Shall I dress? She finally asked, and held the box up off her lap a few inches. I can't wait to see it. We can't wait to see you in it, Audrey answered. Well, I, for one, can wait. Isaac scowled at the box. It's missing parts of it. Charlotte kissed her father's cheek before she peeked into the box. Racy red it was. The dress was strapless with vertical ruffles. The front was shorter than the back. She squealed with delight and ran to her parents' closet to change. Charlotte turned side to side in front of the mirror, this time with a pleased grin. It's gorgeous, Charlotte called out. Come out, daughter, Isaac called back. I'm still deciding whether I should claim all your dances or not. Charlotte peeked around the closet door frame. Her father was pacing back and forth in front of the bed. Her mother was watching him with amusement. Her heart skipped a beat. Could she give them up? She frowned at herself in the mirror. It was true. She was considering giving up all she knew, all she loved, for the chance at choosing love. How much did love cost? Did the weight of finding it balance what she was willing to give up to find it? She blinked back her tears and stepped out of the closet. Isaac stopped pacing. He stared at her, eyes wide, mouth open a bit. Audrey stood and placed her hand in Isaac's hand. They exchanged a tender glance. Isaac frowned. He reached out to Charlotte and waved her over. Come here, Lottie. Charlotte found herself wrapped up in her parents' arms. She laid her head on her father's left shoulder. Her mother leaned in on his right. He held them both without word, for a moment without measure. We love you, Lottie, Audrey finally said. She looked her daughter directly in the eyes. We love you no matter what happens. Had to get in one last try? Charlotte asked quietly. She directed her gaze up at her father, who seemed to be in a state of wordlessness. It was a strange affliction for a professor. He looked down at her through his glasses and snorted. The rules are garbage sometimes, and I helped make most of them, he muttered. Charlotte hugged his side. We wouldn't be good parents if we didn't try our best, Audrey added. It was true that they had tried. Charlotte had suffered through enough blind dates to know. Are there even any young weavers out there I haven't met, she joked. Isaac frowned. Well, he looked down at his feet. Some, Audrey said quickly and leaned into Isaac. Not every weaver takes classes here, you know, and there are a few who took classes here only as children. Just enjoy tonight, Ebby said boldly from the doorway. She was wearing a blue metallic shorty unitard paired with a tutu and a bustle. Charlotte thought back to the days when she was a toddler and a young girl. Back then she would run around the castle in a tutu alongside Ebby. After they had run around until their lungs hurt, they would dive into the swimming pool, tutus and all. Their eyes met, and they instantly both smiled, aware that they were both thinking fondly of the past. Chime popped in with Spindle this time. They were hand in hand. Spindle wore slacks now, but he kept his leather jacket. Oh, Charlotte, Chime said. Charlotte gave her parents another hug before stepping back and twirling in her dress. It's gorgeous, isn't it? You are gorgeous, Audrey corrected her. The dress is merely an accessory. Charlotte smiled and blushed. Mama, thank you. Yes, well, I suppose you had to grow up. Isaac cleared his throat and dusted off the imaginary specks from his clothes. And now I must feed you to the wolves. It's a dance, Isaac, Audrey laughed, not a sacrifice. Humph. Spindle turned to Isaac. It's time, sir. Well then, if we must, Isaac said. He winked at Charlotte and offered Audrey his arm. Isaac escorted Audrey up the steps to the door to the library. Spindle and Chime popped back out. Ebby left on her own, the way she liked it. Charlotte hung back for a moment. She gazed over at her mother's vanity and her father's reading chair. She silently said goodbye to the room. Upstairs, under her bed was a bag. Tonight, after the ball, she would leave her home. She wasn't going to let them erase her memory, and she wasn't going to marry on orders. The Weaver Council would have to hunt her down first. And that is chapter 2. See you soon for chapter 3.